Okay, well, we're going to officially get the meeting started. We want to welcome everybody that attended. It appears that most everyone, we have a handful of staff here, but everyone, I think there's several people that I've logged in so far virtually. Quickly introduce myself. My name is David Forte. I work as the Capital Improvement Projects Manager for the City of Pensacola. I am the city's project manager for this specific project, the Garden Street median landscape beautification project. We are excited to get this project into design and under construction here very soon. And we will be doing that with the help of our engineer of record and consultant firm of Atkins Global. I have David Haight here next to me, and we got Atkins staff in the back. I want to make sure I recognize the staff from the Community Redevelopment Agency. Helen Gibson, director, is, I believe, downstairs helping everybody get up to the room if you were to show up here in person. We got Miss Victoria D'Angelo, Miss Denise Myrick, and if there's anyone else I have not recognized, I apologize. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. David Haight to walk us through the workshop.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to review the landscape plans for the landscape improvements plan for Garden Street median from Alkany Street to A Street. The meeting is being offered both in person for people in the room and remotely, and we hope that you're attending remotely if you're interested in this project. For those attending remotely, please be aware that there is about a 30-second delay between what is occurring in the meeting room and what you see online. And for those of you here in the room with us today, we have aerial maps and surveys of the project available for review around the room. But if you look at the maps and other materials, please keep a social distance of 6 feet between unrelated parties when you're looking at the maps. When you walked in, you may have received a copy of the concept plans and landscape palette. They're online, so you'll be able to see those. If you did not, please see Cheryl in the back of the room for those materials. For those joining remotely, the maps, plans, and plant palette are available on the project webpage at www.cityofpensacola.com/Garden Street Landscape. And after ST, there's a dash. We're going to take about 10 minutes to allow everyone to review the materials. And if you would, their materials are on the website. And I'll repeat that. It's the cityofpensacola.com/gardens-st-landscape. I hope everyone's back. I've clicked the unmute button. So let me just suggest that if you took a look at the materials that are online, what you saw is aerial photos, and they are strip maps of the entire 10-block project area. And one of the sets of drawings has the actual in the field survey superimposed on it, so you can see the locations of streetlights and trees and the physical features that are out there in the field. The reason that is important is because if you look at the aerial photo, which is maybe a clearer version of the photo, you see what look like trees, but you also see shadows. And so the shadows are a little bit misleading. That's not the size of the tree. What is the tree plus the shadows. The other thing is that the aerial photos were taken, we believe, in winter time when there were some trees that didn't have leaves on them. So what I will tell you is that you need to kind of zoom into those and get a good sense of what the street looks like. And we're going to go from the opening slide for the program tonight and move forward.
Hello, my name is Alyssa Garcia. I'm a landscape architect with Atkins Global. The proposed plant palette is pretty much a grouping of the plant material that was already proposed to the Florida Department of Transportation for the grant. I've added a few more native plants than originally propose like the eastern redbud and Chickasaw plum to get some more flowering trees outside of just crepe myrtle. The same thing then as well with the shrubs, where we tried to stay to a mostly native plant palette, and from there it's all Florida friendly outside of the native plant material.
So thank you, Alyssa. The one thing that I will add is that we were asked by the CRA to focus on some things that provide color. And some of these materials actually provide spring green and then green all year, and as well as flowering in the spring and on into the late into the year. There has been a comment that the azaleas that are out there in the field are things that people value and that we would like to also use. One of the emphasis of this project is likely to be a lot of ground cover, because this is a very large project. The limits are 10 blocks long, and so it's important for us to make sure that two things. One, you can see through the median from one side to the other for security, for septet reasons. We want to have a secure area so that there are eyes on the street. And the other thing is that there's vast areas of grass that in some cases are not in great shape. So we think that ground covers like the Asiatic jasmine and the perennial peanut might be the best solution. The other thing that I should mention, and David Forte and I just talked about this a bit ago, is some of the median areas on the east end are irrigated. And it is true that if we landscape this median, the full median, it is necessary to irrigate these plant materials because no water from the street gets to the median. It's a curbed median, and the only water that would get into the median is rainwater. So we're choosing things that are successful of themselves because they are relatively successful in the native landscape, but also we expect that we are going to have to irrigate. And we will check the success of the existing irrigation on the east end. We're going to test it and see if it's suitable to continue to be used. On the west end, west of Palafox, we likely are going to have to install an irrigation system. And we've discussed the fact that that might be simply lines along the curbs that are long throw heads that throw into the interior of the median. The reason for that is we don't want to have spray that goes outside the curb because there are parking spaces all along the street on both sides. So Alyssa, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, that's it for now.
What we really do want from you, citizens, is that you give us your comments about what plant materials you would enjoy seeing along the corridor. And clearly we have to make sure that they will be successful. In these kinds of contracts, it is normal to require of the contractor that the contractor maintain the plant material for a 1-year period. And so we'll have a discussion about whether that 1 year is sufficient. We've used the 1 year before, and Helen Gibson and I have talked in the past about perhaps extending that to 2 years so that we can assure that the plants have stabilized and that they are healthy and that they will thrive after that maintenance period. So one of the things we want to do is also do a walkthrough of the corridor so that you can get a sense of what we really are faced with. Now, the images that are going to be on the screen are Street View images from Google Street View, and they are from, for the most part, January of 2017. So they are the situation prior to the hurricane, and they are showing the images that indicate the quality and health of the materials at the time that the Google truck drove down the street. Now, this is a substitute for us doing what we would perhaps normally do to do a walkthrough during the process of debating what the design would consist of. I'm going to move my mask down just a little bit. And the thing that we should point out is that some of the plant material and the trees are distressed, not due to the hurricane, but they were distressed prior to the beginning of this project. And what you're seeing here is a live oak that I know that citizens of Pensacola and Escambia County want to keep, and that is probably not in the best health. So those are the kinds of things that we will want to debate as we go forward. One of the things that we often do in these projects is discuss pruning and maintaining with an arborist advising how we can perhaps save the tree, but also make it less hazardous. I'm just going to go along the street so that we can get a good visual sense of the conditions in the median. And we're going from east to west. The most important thing about this little exercise we're going through is to give you a chance to actually comment about what you're seeing. And I think we very much value your comments, because in the original concept that we put together, we made some comments about removing some plant material, and then we got some really important discussion going about whether that was what individuals wanted. And the sable palm in the image is one of the things that was actually in that discussion. That palm tree is growing, and it will grow for quite some time. But the question was whether it was appropriate to leave it if we could substitute other materials that might better, quote, beautify the median. The crepe myrtles have also been the subject of some discussion in Pensacola, because they're the ubiquitous flowering tree in the area. They're everywhere. And so I think there has been some suggestion that we might not want to add more, but we also know that they thrive, and they actually successfully survive the hurricanes. They can topple and still grow. And the unfortunate part of the crepe myrtles locally is that they sometimes get pruned back in a very severe way, and that's both a maintenance issue and a beautification issue. Got to move on, because then in this area there's not much of in the way of landscape. In the areas you're seeing here in the median, you can see that the grass is distressed, and these are areas that we would consider using some ground cover that would then provide something that's a relief from the lawn look. And some of the ground covers that we showed in that plant palette would be successful here. The mealy grass is something that will survive. We've seen it in the Bayfront Parkway median and in other locations on Main Street. It's also a plant that you understand in this time of the year has the purple fronds that are very showy. And then under the trees, we need something that can survive shade, and that's why the liriope has been something we selected. Alyssa, if you would alert me if you want to add any comments, it would be helpful. And what I also will say is, because we took pictures of this, but the survey actually shows the fact that in some cases the street lights are located in such a way that they're inside the canopy of some of the trees. And you can see one that's located like that on the screen right now. So the debate would be whether we would prune back some of the branches that might be impeding light from the street lights, or would make it, would be a problem if they were blown by wind into the streetlights. And once again, I do want to mention that for the most part, other than the turn lanes at the median openings, there is parking along the majority of the street. So we need to make sure that we understand that anything we plant doesn't need to drape over into, if it's a tree or a shrub, drape over into the area adjacent to the curb. In this particular area, there's a very tiny sidewalk. And whether that was built for the purpose of sidewalk or not, it actually provides a very convenient way to step out of a vehicle from the driver's side onto something other than the turf, or in some cases into wet grass or other plant material. So for the most part, the street lights are set back about 4.5 feet or so from the back of curb. And so our feeling is that we probably need to recognize street lights first and not plant anything that will grow up into the lighted area and that would damage the street lights in a windstorm. Another aspect, and Alyssa could give us more information if there's some questions about it. This is a DOT highway. It's a DOT street, and there are some requirements for site triangles at median openings. And Alyssa is very familiar with the DOT requirements, and we have to pay strict attention to those issues. We can't plant anything that obstructs the view of a vehicle that's trying to go through those median openings to be able to pass through them with oncoming traffic. I know you all and I are very familiar with the issues of trying to pass through those median openings and how the traffic, the oncoming traffic is coming is probably faster than you'd like for it to arrive at that median opening. So your tendency is to dart across the street. So what we need to make sure of is that if we plant any material, it will not be higher than say 2 feet or so. And if we plant any materials that are trees or shrubs, that we would limb them up to roughly 6 feet above the ground. So I think the next picture may bypass this oak tree, but in writing the street right today, I did notice that these trees have been denuded due to the windstorm of the hurricane. And what I will tell you is that I was formerly a resident of Bay County in Panama City, where Hurricane Michael came through, and if it didn't destroy the tree by knocking it over, it actually tore all the leaves off. And so it takes a long time for them to recover from a storm like that. In addition, I don't have perfect information about what the flooding condition was, but I did see images in the area of Palafox Street that showed quite a substantial flooding that I believe overtopped the curb. We will verify that. But the current condition is that some of the trees have been damaged, not just by wind, but also by flooding. This tree is a magnificent oak tree, and what we did notice, and this picture doesn't show it because it's a static image, is that it does need some pruning. And I believe it already had some pruning of the outer branches, probably post-Ivan. It's been around that long and was probably damaged during the storm. It's pretty common along the street to have the ends of each of these median openings landscaped with crepe myrtles. And in this case, they may be ones that you wouldn't plant there today, but that we want to maintain so that they are well maintained and give that visibility for vehicles that are trying to make a turn. And as we go forward, and Helen Gibson and Victoria are in the room, so I don't have the ability for them to answer a question to you, but what I do know is that we've been asked in several of these blocks that there's some projects being done on the opposite side of the street, and we've been asked to have some discussions with them about how we react in the median to the things that are getting planted in those tree islands and along the street. So that conversation has yet to occur, but I can tell you that we will have that conversation and make sure that we are planting things that look compatible. As you get further to the west, the plant material is actually better. That may be because it has been there a good bit longer, but the actual jewel of this street and also Palafox is these groves of crepe myrtles, old age crepe myrtles, and they have shown some evidence that they've been pruned back, but not lately. And so in the fall, they have great fall color. In the spring, they have a flush of green, and then they're all identical, so they all flower at the same time. One of the issues that I gingerly bring up is human foot traffic, because those areas are also loved by individuals that are in the median and have, in some cases, trampled the root zone. And when I drove by today, I saw in this location that there's virtually no ground cover. So one of the things that we would want to spend money on, even though it's not normally something you consider as, quote, beautification, is pine straw that will provide some protection for these trees. And it in itself instantly makes the median look like it's much better maintained. So we did show in the application that there isn't a line item in the estimate, and there will be an estimate for pine straw that would be used around all the trees so that the irrigation demands of those trees and plants would be less. So this block is really the showpiece of Garden Street. And again, this oak tree has street lights that are embedded in the crown of the tree. And we're not going to be able to resolve that, except to say that we might want to prune very carefully around the street light itself, so that in a windstorm, the branches would not interfere with the light. You can see the base of these street lights at the base of this tree. Now, what you're seeing on the screen really also is the status quo before the hurricane. So we also have a number of images that we can post on the website. I don't think we've sent those to you yet, but we can give you all the pictures we took, and they are, you could peruse those, but for the most part, I think those that are in attendance here in the room or online are very familiar with what the damage of the storm was. And the one thing I will tell you is some of the material that's still laying there and the damaged trees will still have to have some maintenance and removal of debris even prior to the start of this landscape project. It would be necessary to do that prior to the start so that the contractor has a free, clear ground to begin work, and they would not then be obligated to do the debris management and the cleanup. So we will want to clarify that very carefully and clearly in the plans. One of the things that you can see here is all of the underground utilities that we will have to deal with. And the reason that we spent the dollars we did on a physical survey a survey of the physical features is so that we would know to the best of the surveyor's knowledge, looking at everything that's on the ground and was marked on the ground for them, the location of all those utilities. Because what we may be faced with in a place like this, a location like this, is simply amending the grass that's there while making the utilities visible after we're finished. Now, what we would normally want to do in a median opening like this is at the end of it, have some ground cover that makes the word beautification come to life. And this would be a location where we would tend to want to plant the Asiatic jasmine, but we may not do it because of the large number of utilities that are located here. When the, excuse me, when the parking lane transitions to turn lanes, that is evidence of the fact that we really need to be very careful about those sight distances at the median opening. And so you see the turn lane here on the street goes all the way down to the intersection. I think that's Spring Street. So this is also the location where we have some benches and a little plaza and some crepe myrtles that are bordering it, and some azaleas that are not in the greatest condition. So this is the kind of thing that we want to discuss. This also is a location with benches in a median where there's not really a crosswalk, and there are vehicles that are going down the turn lane and not really looking for a pedestrian. So we do want to have some discussion about whether this remains, and whether, if it does remain, we make it much more visible so that anybody, it's an attractive location for people to try to cross the street to get to it. We want to make it more visible, and at some point it really becomes more of a traffic management issue also. So going further down the street, there are some groups of azaleas that really could use some real pruning, and I'm not going to try to go backwards because I'll probably fail at that. But for example, just as we just passed a grouping on the left here of azaleas that really do need to be maintained, pruned, and then probably fertilized so for success. So this is the Spring Street median opening, and it's wide open. So this would be a great place for us to actually embellish at the end with some plant material that would show off the median, because it's open to the sun, and it's an area where if we stayed low, we'd have to test this, but say, for example, with the Perennial Peanut, DOT is using Perennial Peanut on a lot of their median openings at the end of the median, and you'll recognize it as a yellow flower that flowers for most of the spring and summer, and it's a perennial, thus the name Perennial Peanut. And when it's planted in masses, it's a very good showpiece of a place that normally just gets grass in it. It does not require much maintenance, and they actually can mow it with a mowing machine. It seems to thrive in that way. Again, Alyssa, if you have anything you want to add, I'm open to opening the mic and letting you add some things.
My only point to that is for everyone to keep in mind that on the ends of these medians at the intersections, we will have to keep it low for plant material, for sight distance as well as crash zones.
Right, and the things that we showed as ground covers, I think probably would work for that purpose. And if you look at Bayfront Parkway, we used the seashore junipers along that, all of the median openings, and they were pretty successful at ground cover and they stay low enough that you can actually see across the median to see oncoming traffic. So let's go further down the street. So from Spring Street to A Street, this is the condition. So the vegetation gets a lot sparser along here, and in some cases, some of these pine trees that existed in these images no longer exist, or they're laying on the ground cut up. So we need to recognize that the pictures you're seeing, the 2017 January picture that you're seeing right here, is not the current condition in every case. So this is wide open. I think we can do some great ground cover. And once again, we have examples of the muhly grass in Bayfront Parkway that's blooming right now. It's the purple fronds that you see, the grasses that you see, and they're very spectacular this time of year, but they also can be used in such a way that they can choke out the weeds that might be along that stretch. Again, we have utilities that we have to deal with, but in this case, this is a location along the street that's a lot easier to imagine masses of plants that will make it actually successful in a sunny area. I believe we actually suggested taking this. I think it's a Crepe Myrtle, but it's showing signs that it's not in the best health. So that might be one where we would remove it and replace with Crepe Myrtles or the other Chickasaw plum or some of the hollies. The thing about the hollies is we need to be careful. And the hollies and magnolias, their natural form is to grow branches all the way to the ground. And we have to be careful about where we would place those for the reasons of site, septed, and security. And again, I think what you're seeing is, and unfortunately, the skip in the image didn't show this tree fully, and I'm not going to try to go backwards, but there are branches that reach the ground of that live oak. So some pruning might be beneficial to the tree and to the visual attractiveness of the median. And again, here at Roos, we have those same sets of grouped Crepe Myrtles as we saw at Palafox. And I think they're all in great shape. It might be that they would be a more attractive grouping if there was pine straw that actually accented the grouping. So placing pine straw, for example, maybe 40 feet back in the median so that it was surrounding this group of Crepe Myrtles would make them a showpiece. And I believe at this point, some of these pine trees are no longer there. And in some cases, these small groups of shrubs that have been pruned back, it might better be suggested that they be replaced with something that's going to thrive and would enjoy this sunny location. Again, these images in this case were taken in January 2017, so this tree does not have leaves, but that's not the health of the tree, that's the time of year. So some of these scattered plant materials look like they have been planted as individuals almost had a whim, let's go out and plant an azalea. So I guess the point I would make about street view is, and the beautification is, that even though they might be successful, it would be far more preferable to have a grouping of them and then something that is a little more of a prominent specimen grouping. Now, this picture actually is in May 2016, so you can see the blooming of these crepe myrtles in the summertime. All the crepe myrtles have been very successful, and although we've had many discussions about the types of trees and street trees to use in Pensacola and Escambia County, we seem to always come back to crepe myrtles because they are extremely hardy and successful in the region. They also are dramatic when they're blooming, and you can see them all up and down Main Street and A Street and other streets that have had them there for any length of time, where they've been very successful. And I think in this case, we recommended some crepe myrtles again, but we could be persuaded that other flowering trees would be, if they were preferred by individuals, that we would maybe go away from so many crepe myrtles. I think we actually recommended a small, low border around the fence here, and the idea would be that, and rather than just the stark fence, it would be something that would fill the area between the curb and the fence, kind of as setting off the rail car. And there are a couple of gates that access that gated area, the fenced area, so we would have to avoid landscape in those areas. And we're getting closer to the west end, and I think you can see that the medians here are dominated by lawn, and in some cases it may be better for us to start thinking about using the ground covers that we showed in our plant palette that would maybe take over the areas that are lawn grass and make them into masses of ground cover that would require less maintenance. In fact, if we use the right ground covers, would not require mowing at all, or maybe a once a year trimming. Again, this is a May 2016 photo, so the crepe myrtles are blooming in this case. This magnolia on the left, I think we actually made a comment that that might be something that had been pruned too severely, and actually magnolias look better if they are left to grow to their natural form with the branches all the way to the ground. This one's been pruned up in tree form. So we're at the end, at the east end of Garden Street, there's a monument, and it's a historical monument, and I don't have the information with me today, but we would want to give it a very prominent focus, and in this case I think that's a Blue Star highway marker, and so we would not want to shield either of those monuments, and we would want to do something that would showcase them with some understory and some material that does not obscure them. So we're at the end of the project limits at A Street, and I have the images that would go back the other direction, but I think we've had a pretty good view of the materials as we went along from east to west. And what I would say is you can also look at the survey that's going to be posted online, and it will have the tree and shrub locations, but not necessarily the botanical name of the material that they actually located. So Alyssa, I'm going to see if you have any further things that you want to add.
No, I guess the only thing to mention is when we were doing some preliminary photos like a week or so ago of Garden Street, it looked like about 5 trees were removed, fallen, or removed or fallen from the hurricane. So that doesn't include anything that might be in decline after the possible flooding or in general damage.
Right, I think probably that would be our first task, is to do a health assessment of the materials that are out there. We certainly know that the trees that were toppled or bent over, there's images in the plant damage concept sheet that show the tree damage. In those cases, we would want to remove those. The one thing I will tell you, when trees are damaged by the storm, the tendency is to want to come in and do the stump grinding and to grind out the stump and the roots. I don't know that I would like to recommend that in this case because of all the utilities that are in this median. I think you maybe would have to be very careful not to disturb underground utilities when you did that work. So it's possible that we could then come back with something that would restore the ground cover in the area where the tree once was and use pine straw as something that would make plantings in that area successful. So we do have to do an evaluation of the damage before we actually begin the design in earnest. And I think we would do that by physically walking. And from the pictures that we got from our staff going out in the field, we actually did the concept plan with the X's on the median where we know that trees were damaged or taken out by the hurricane. So I'm going to ask that if you have comments that you wanted to add to this discussion, we will encourage you to make comments. Victoria's giving me a sign. Okay. And
I think do it now. That
Okay.
way.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Tell them who you. It's
Okay.
It's okay.
I was just informed a few minutes ago that we may or may not have been muted at the kickoff of the meeting, so I'll just do a quick recap. So my name is David Forte. I'm city project manager for this project. This is Garden Street median landscape project. The limits run from Alkanese on the east all the way west to A Street. We have solicited Atkins Global to serve as our design consultant firm to provide the public involvement phase, the design phase, which will follow this, and then overseeing supporting the construction phase as well. We were successful, so I probably should want to make sure I recognize that. We have other city staff available. We have Ms. Victoria D'Angelo with the Community Redevelopment Agency. I know Ms. Helen Gibson was here as well. I think she may be manning the front door. She's the director for the Community Redevelopment Agency. This is a Community Redevelopment Agency project. The CRA staff was successful back in 2018 in applying for and securing state highway beautification funds to offset the construction or the project costs to the tune of $98,000 of state funds. So that's a match fund. So we, the City of Pensacola, CRA, will have to provide at least that a match of that to the overall project costs. And as David mentioned earlier, we are in the process of, it is very valuable and important to us to engage the public for your comments and your questions. We want to incorporate that into the plan before we truly kick off the design phase, which will be happening in the next couple of weeks. Today is October 27th. Following today's meeting, we will still have a full week for a public comment period that'll run through November 4th. Excuse me? Okay, next Tuesday, November, we'll close on the 4th is what this says. So, there's an online form you can access to provide comments if you were able to provide a comment during the meeting tonight, all the way up until next Tuesday. The website you can access to find that form is www.cityofpensacola.com/garden-st-landscape. Again, that's www.cityofpensacola.com/garden-st-landscape. And I think at this point, we're going to turn it over to our question and answer period. So if you have any questions, Ms. Victoria will, I presume you'll read them out loud, and then either David or Alyssa will address them. And after that, we'll conclude the meeting. And then we'll, and I probably definitely want to state from a construction schedule, the grant that I mentioned earlier, there is an expiration date of that grant agreement, and that is June 30th of 2021. So give or take 10 months from now to satisfy the grant timeline. So there is some that clock is starting to tick, and so following the public comment period, after today's meeting, public comment period, moving into design, David and Atkins have produced a design schedule and a construction schedule that we are confident that we'll be able to meet that timeline. So we are looking for a construction period in spring of 2021, which is my understanding is a valuable planting period as well for the plants that we plan to plant. So with that, I will turn it back over for our Q&A session.
Keep in mind there's a 30-minute delay.
30
second.
A 30-second delay.
So there's a delay here, so we have to deal with the delay. So Alyssa, stand by for any questions that you and I can answer.
Give it a minute.
Probably say that if you want to say if you want to provide a comment, we'll give a couple more minutes.
We're taking the comments as they come in, and we're going to give it a couple more minutes so that we get all the comments. And so far, we don't have anything that we need to address here in the public forum. Please provide your comments to us and post them on the website. We'll give the website information again so that you certainly have it there. Again, the website is www.cityofpensacola.com/garden-st-landscape. Once again, we do value your comments, and we don't really want to proceed without having fully vetted the public concerns that came out of our long conversations with citizens when we did the walkthrough on the project site, and then in conversations we've had since that time. And again, you have an opportunity for comments through next Tuesday. All right, Victoria has said that it's time for us to actually wrap up the meeting, and what I will tell you is we've put some effort into our thinking about this project from the very beginning in the form of the original concept plan, but I think it's important for me to say that the concept that we produced was for the purposes of doing two things: to prove to DOT that this truly is an effort of beautification of a state road in the middle of a city. And so we did make some comments that probably need your input. And the second purpose of doing the concept plan was so that we could do a preliminary estimate. We had to know how much funds we were asking for in the application. And I was told that these beautification funds have gone without being granted in some cases because for lack of communities asking for them. So it was fortunate that the CRA and we were able to produce an application that was actually attractive enough to the DOT district that they granted the dollars to go forward with this project. So I think we have a huge opportunity for the community to beautify the median. I think we can do it in such a way that it is as maintenance-free as possible and as successful as possible. And again, that is going to rely on irrigation. So please forward your comments to us. We value them. We're listening. And the purpose of today's meeting was to listen. Thank you.